into like putting more impacts on our case. Before that, I will go into some quick rebuttals to OG. Their main case is about capitalism. Notice that they didn't rebut the Yuval's response to it that says there is no reason why the inequality will be abolished from it, because communities usually share the same amount of wealth. And they said, look, there wouldn't be a capitalist system to begin. Now, this is absurd, because even if the communities will rise and not single families, then we have to understand that the access to resources, even in the past, was unequal between one community and the other. One community lives next to a river and the other don't. One community lives next to a place where you can grow stuff and the other not. Inequality wouldn't be abolished from the world. It is at the point where they didn't prove to us their main case doesn't stand, and we are already above them. The second thing that they tell us that we compare our best case to their worst case. I think that the more average case, like the case that applies to most people, is parents actually loving their children, parents not neglecting their children. This probably affects the vast majority of people. Now, they say maybe like in their world, there are some people who don't have the time to look after their children. I'm not sure if they solve it on their time, because the community will still be poor. It will still need to work a lot. And B, when it's your parents that they need to work for you, that you already love them for it, because they provide you the little that you have, and you know what they want. When it's a community, you're less likely, as Yuval explained to you, to develop this kind of relationship, to understand it. They say there will be more abusive relationship. I don't understand why it's true, right? We think that there are very small number of abusive parents, and now these small number of abusive parents will have access to a lot more children they can abuse. Maybe not the whole day, but they can abuse them little by little whenever they have the chance, and they can affect more children. I don't think it's worth and say the children grew up with these parents to begin with. I don't think that they will they create a good impact on that case. So this is all for OG. I think that we're above them at this point. So to my first extension point, how it makes the parents happy. Now, in today's world, what makes parents happy, as Yuval started to explain, is that you see a child that you created. You literally created the child. He looks like you in most cases. You see him grow up. You see him having his first experiences. You know that you are the sole responsible for his life. This is a huge feeling of like fulfillment, a huge feeling of you're destined to do it. You have a lot of responsibility. This makes a lot of people feel good about themselves. It's only educator. You decide what values he will have when he grows up, in a comparative to the case where the community decides together these values, and oftentimes it will be probably against your personal values, because you are only one person, and there will be cases where the community doesn't agree with you. And the last thing, you spend a lot of time with it. Like, even if you don't love him on the first day, you spend a lot of time with it, see him every day, see him smile at you, and he's a baby, and he's a young child, and you start to love him. This is in comparison where you spend your day with, like, I don't know, 15, 20 children, that are, some of them are crying at all times. You don't have the capacity to deal with one child for a long time. You have to constantly put up fires, like this child fell down and starts crying, these two children are fighting amongst each other. You don't have the capacity to work together. Now, notice that these things that makes the parents happy don't happen in their world, right? As I try to analyze it comparatively, and each of my points don't happen in their world, and it happens in our world. Notice that as OGs considered, the narrative that parents is something that should bring you a lot of happiness will less likely to exist in their world. meaning that even like the narrative from society doesn't make you happier in addition to all the biological and psychological mechanisms that we provide. Why is it important? It's important because A, the parental community is probably most of the people in the world. Most of the people are or will be parents in the future. Meaning that if we prove a delta to their happiness, it's a huge delta to the happiness of the world, and we think that it's good enough to start. And B, the happiness of the parents affects tremendously on the happiness of the children. Before I will explain why, I will take CG if they have something.
Okay, so on both sides of the house, you have the same limited time spent between parents and children, right? So why should we keep in the risk of being alone when parents go to work and
thank you. So yeah, I think that you have the same time capacity, but in today's world, you have the evenings where you don't work and you have time to spend with your children. You have the weekends where you don't work and you have the time to spend with your children. You have the 6 months that the mother goes out of work or the father goes out of work to be with their children. This is the time that they develop the relationship and they are able to look after their child. Now, notice that the happiness of the parents is very crucial to the happiness of the child and how he grows up in the future. Because if the child has a problem, it can go to its parents who it trusts so much, and Yuval explained to you why in their world the child won't trust the parents as much, and he can explain to him its problem. At the point where he doesn't have that option, he can have like a very weird looking over the wall. Let's say fight another child, he will think it's the worst thing in the world. Instead of coming to an adult that can just explain to him right away, look, it's not so bad, just go and apologize, like adults often do. Because we showed you a delta to the happiness of the children, and later somebody will look after them, and we showed you a huge the happiness of the parents, we call you to oppose this motion. Thank you.
I thank that speaker for that fine speech, and indeed all speakers. It was a lovely top half, and I invite the member of government to begin the bottom half of this debate. Here.
Yep, mic check.
Yep, you're audible.
Can you give me 1 second to set my timer? Okay, we will start in 3, 2, 1. Starting with rebuttals to the OO. Look, first speaker of the OO's assertion about how biological parents and attachment to the children is better, and I think, yeah, okay, let me start. So the important thing here to remember is that attachment to the parents are comes to the ground in time, right? So you're not like when you're born just attached to your parent. A baby, when they're just born, they are just like not aware of any parent. They don't even see, they don't like, the only sense they have is like touching and the warmth, and that can be replaced by anyone else. So if neither parent nor children is not attached to each other, that is not going to create that much of a problem. And the teacher will be the authority there, and that will create problems. The only problem that I got from opening opposition is that this create a lot of respect, but I'm not sure what does that mean. We think a teacher being authority is actually the important thing here and what we want today, and I'm going to be developing my argument on that. Analysis of teacher. When they're talking about analysis of the teacher, they are saying, oh, they are sick and tired, they are dealing with the 20 children once at a time, so this is going to not give the support and love that they could have received. Now, first, these teachers are psychologically educated. Okay, yeah. So what does that mean? They know how to treat children. They know how to attach the children in the standards of the education, which means they are going to offer children a healthy form of attachment. Second, they're going to be more serious about dealing with children because they get simply years of education. Second, they like children and spending time. Look, if you are choosing an occupation, most probably you like things about it, right? So you like you like like, I don't know, take care of them, and you are open to like take care of the child, and especially if you are a teacher who possibly can go to that occupation, most probably you are okay and you love it. Even if when they're talking about like 20 children one at a time, and some teachers will get sick and tired of it, you should understand one thing. In the status quo, this is symmetrical, that the parents, or there are still parents exist that sick and tired of even one children and they're not taking care of them. So we believe this is not like, this is, even though this exists, this is not that big, and also exists in the current scenario, and we believe it is replaceable. So it's not like, it's not solving anything. So I think opening government didn't give, I'll take it 4 or 5 maybe. When opening government didn't like give many things about modeling, let me just set some modeling. First, these children will be taken away from birth. So they're not going to be like with their family from the 5th years old and then they're going to be taken away. No. And also the curricula will be like stated by the government. And yeah, okay, that's actually the important thing. So even though they go to like quote unquote poorer backgrounds, I think the what we offer as a modeling is going to be based on equality, on the on many things, including facility and the ideology. So what is the problem of the closing government today? The problem of the closing government is that the ideologies that children received through their childhood are deeply rooted in their lives, and for that reason they are like, they have a bias and tendency, like they have a tendency to their ideologies that their parents gave them. So when they grow up, it's almost impossible for them to like take this away, and for that reason polarization in the society happens at a different level. Polarization of the society happens, for example, in Western countries, about like you're looking at conservatives and liberals, and you're looking at how actually they are coming from same family background, and they're just like, they're doing it because they receive it. You should understand one thing about children. Children is tabula rasa, okay? They have some genes, okay, that give them like abilities, you know, to like intellectual capabilities, physical capabilities, or incapabilities. But on the ideological level, children is empty, right? Completely empty. And what parents are doing is that taking these children at most vulnerable phase and then filling it with whatever they have. You should understand parents. Parents wants to transmit everything, and most probably, most important thing for this child, like parents, is to be able to, like, one of the most important thing, to transmit their ideologies. So they are like almost like vomiting everything to the children to be able to like get. So also how, like, why impact all the different, like, okay, intuitive siding, deeply rooted ideologies, and also bias siding and polarization of the community are this 4 impacts. And also why we believe in an ideology, because it's reputation, family figures, seeing from one side. Okay, so when it comes to, like, for us, the most important thing is the exploring their own identity, because it's going to cause authenticity and more experience and more meaning experienced by the individuals. What this parent is giving, like what these teachers are giving, that the neutral side, and when these children are growing up at the 18th age, they're going to be able to explore whatever they have if they want to explore. Yes.
The fact that the caregivers are psychologically educated is an assertion. In Israel, we have had many instances of caregiver abuse lately because they get through the test that you give them. It's unclear why they are better than parents to do all of these kind of things.
Okay, I don't know. Like, okay, Israeli example is, for us, is an extreme example and shouldn't be included in the debate, because first, the education, I don't know the education of Israeli, but generally education are not only like 4 years old theoretical education, but also like some things about practice, like how are you going to take care of the children. They are doing like projects and also in the practical life. So we believe, like, I don't know Israeli, but generally people know how to deal with these children. But even though that is not the case, this is still symmetrical happening in the site, and we believe most of the people will be able to take care of their children. So okay, when natural things happens, what's going to happen? Rational differences based on own rational will happen in the society. More coherent society and more common curriculum. They're going to believe their own problems. They will be rational, value they will be rational, and they will value their own journey, and that will discriminate, like diminish the problems and the how the polarization in society. Look at the Middle East, look at the Western world. It doesn't matter. There are thousands of different beliefs and the sects that will create whole backlash. And also some teachers will be okay. Sorry. So even though as a result there are some backlashes and fights happening, still this is going to be based on own rationale. And second, people are not going to get that extreme because they learn to value their own like rationale. So we believe you should vote for closing up.
I thank that speaker for the fine speech, and I invite the member of to extend the case for setup. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Like, give me just 30 seconds to set up my stuff. For POI, please raise it in chat. And please indicate the house that you're in. Okay. Can you hear like the karaoke my neighbor?
Yes, there is some noise in the background,
but is it?
It's fine.
Disturbing?
Like I think we can understand what you're saying, so it's all right.
Okay, thank you.
No bother.
Starting in 3, 2, 1, and go. Look at the structure of the family. In times of need, when the community oppresses you because you are not the same as everyone and you are different because of your gender, race, and identity, your family is the one present to defend and protect you from the biases of your community. They teach you values different from the community because notice, coming from the opening half, both teams are arguing in a perfect example where OG thinks that communities are perfect even when it isn't, and OO thinks that parents are perfect. Two things in this speech. One, self-identity develops your benevolent nature where you are able to challenge the status quo when you are raised by your nuclear family. Second, I will then look at the counterfactual of the government world and discuss why ours is better. But before that, 3 extraneous rebuttals. One, OG told us that parents don't care about their child. In the current status quo, we think that there are already measures that take care of these problems that are already working. This looks like taking away the children from the abusive parents, family welfare subsidies given to poor families who are struggling to raise their child. These alternatives are present and do not homogenize and brainwash children into entering in the patriarchal community when that's the case. Secondly, OG told us that their parents have access to their child in their world. Notice that the info slide states that the disciplinary and education standards are done by the collective. This means that as a minority, it is so much harder to challenge the views of the community being imposed on your child because you don't have the influence in comparison to the elites within that community, right? Lastly, CG told us that children have biased tendencies towards the parents, and that's harmful. We think on our side of the house, you are still able to solve these biases of coming from the parents when it is wrong because there are other narratives that you encounter in school or with your friends. This means that if your parents tell you that the patriarchy is good, your teachers might counteract this. Or if your friends raised by a pro-feminist parents can convince you that the thing that your parents told is also wrong, right? We think that's very possible that you are able to change your values that you learned from your parents because there are other values presented to you by your friends and other support system. However, in government side, when the community tells you that the patriarchy is good, no one is able to counteract this narrative because everyone is homogenized. All of your friends believe that the patriarchy is good because that's how the community raised you. We think that's harmful when no one is able to counteract these narratives. So first extension, self-identity develops your benevolent nature where you are able to challenge the status quo when you are raised by your family. Look, when you grow up in certain communities, you are shackled from the traditions and molding you were subjected ever since your birth. If these traditions are wrong, you are unable to challenge this because you have to concede your own interests or because you don't have self-identity. This looks like white people who are majority in a community that are bigoted, that are the one in authority, for example, or men that love the patriarchy that are the one telling other people to this is the kind of education that are given to these children, for example, or this is the kind of values I must impose inside government. people who control the very structure of the community because oppression from the past made sure that minorities have little influence and power. Communally raised means you continue this oppression. When you are raised in a nuclear family in our side of the house, you find your own identity independent from the identity the community shapes you from birth. You are able to interact with different narratives in our side of the house. Two things. Children raised by a nuclear family means that you are able to contradict the strong culture and tradition asserted by the community, which means you know the rights that you deserve and that you recognize how others might be exploiting you and being able to challenge the wrong perception and views of your very own community that oppress other communities different from you. Just because I am a white person and my immediate community is white people, if I am raised by a nuclear family that is also white who are not bigoted and I know that the black deserves rights, then I am going to be a child who are pro-black, for example. I would be an ally to the blacks, being able to strengthen minorities with capital from the majority. We think that you gain intersectionality in our side of the house. But before I go on to my principles, OG.
But there are different parents. Most parents are affected by community, and parents also can be not supportive and conservative. While we have caregivers that interested to make good communication among the children because of the reasons that we mentioned before, of the qualification, etc.
That case is contingent when my community is perfect, when there's no discrimination within the community. We think that's very rare in current status quo, and there are a lot of communities within status quo that are very biased to certain races, to certain identity. We think that's not gonna accrue in your side of the house. So what's the principle? Within the community, there are also differences and fractures, right? This fracture is correct because it doesn't mean you're unable to mobilize as one when you have different interest, for example. That is to say, the beauty of community is it is able to protect everyone no matter what their self-vested interests are. We think that even if you are not communally raised, the community still have an interest to protect you when the time comes, right? When the time comes. So what's the counterfactual? You are in government, you are unable to challenge certain dogmas that shackle you, unable to develop and self-actualize as a person because the community brainwashes you into thinking that because you are a minority, you do not deserve these rights, that because you don't have the number, you are not a priority anymore. This means that you have to constantly sacrifice because you think it is your moral obligation because the community paid for your education, your food, and necessities ever since birth. That is, you have to sacrifice interest for gays, for example. You have sacrifice lesser harassment for black people because if not, you will be antagonized by the very people that raised you and they tell you that you don't have conscience, for example, or you're not grateful enough of these kinds of money. This is harmful because the majority is not always right. The community is not absolute. There are moments where they will go wrong, and because you are told that you have a moral obligation to concede interest just because the community raised you and funded you and gave funds to you for food, for example, since birth, there is no challenge to this very monopoly, and we think that it is important in our side of the house you are able to challenge these kinds of traditions and dogmas. Even if the community represents you and is good, why is this still wrong? The children are in debt and the children's self-interest is not all covered by the community. There are certain characteristics of the human person that the community doesn't represent. It is so much harder to assert your own interest inside government because you have to convince the whole community to fund maybe your expensive hobbies of sports like tennis or sports that need very expensive equipment. The reason for this is the decision in matters like funding and education is made by the community, like the info slide states. Maybe many would want children to focus on their education rather than sports. And this discussion would delay how the child can get this funding for his equipment important for growth. On our side of the house, this changes because you only have to convince your parents and the parents' discussion is not that long, not that varied, and you are able to get these things faster. Secondly, or if you have a bad personality as a child, like being lazy or irresponsible, this is shared to the whole community. You get called out by everyone in the community and experience so much shame from everyone. It is so much harder to function as a child in the community because everyone knows you are bad. On our side of the house, these bad personalities are limited in the four corners of your house and your family because parents do not want to shame you to others and are more likely to keep it to themselves. With all of those reasons, we are proud to oppose.
I thank that speaker for that fine speech, and I invite the GovWhip to conclude the case for side prop. Here.
Thank you. Mic check.
Yep, you're audible.
Okay, give me a second to get my papers. There was a lot of notes to take here. Yeah, I think we're good to go. 3, 2, 1. Panel, when the closing opposition comes and tell you that the case of the opening opposition was so idealistic of the family, they actually come and give us a more idealistic version of the family, where the parents are some sort of like really accepting, or really like that reached godhood in terms of mutual understanding or like open-mindedness. Please, if you have such parents, give them to us so we can use them for the sake of the community, right? Because these parents don't exist in totality and they're not a majority in this society. So the thing is that like I will be moving like this. I will do some rebuttals to the opposition side, then I will do like some weighting and showing you how the impact of our extension is actually the one that is really major in this debate, right? So first thing, let's start with the member of opposition. So what they tell you basically is that wrong traditions and the continued, like the oppression continues basically because of the community. But what we are telling you here today is that when you are raised in the community based on the same ideology, I cannot oppress someone that has the same ideology as me, right? Basic logic. So the thing is that what they tell you again is that they contradict themselves, and they tell you, okay, just because I'm raised in a white family that is conservative and votes for Trump, then I will, if my parents tell me that like black people deserves right, then I will be okay with it, which is basically wrong. Because when you are raised in a like when your parents, when you are raised, you're always saying that like, oh, Trump is right. And when you go read that Trump's tweets are all about like sexism, about like undermining minorities, you basically grow up like eating the things, as my partner explained, that the kids are tabula rasa, they are white, a white page that parents keep feeding and giving them their ideology slowly. Let me move to the OO, and then I will do the connections with our case to show you how, compared to the opposition side, we are basically giving you a higher impact and better solution for the kids and for the community. So when we are speaking about the kibbutzim, basically, right? We believe that in that sort of like the communist or like, you know, the community ideology, that countries such as Israel that are in like the geopolitical thing kept that sense of union of the community and didn't raise a sort of individualism that kept them going. When we see that Israel has the highest like like people go into military, that's not because parents educated them to do so. That's because the sense of community that they have, because they all believe in the same ideology. Because me, I was raised in Europe, in France, and I don't care if France goes to war or not, because my parents gave me everything. I had private school, private education, private everything, and I'm not even like French, right? I'm from a minority. So I think this is clear from OO as well, from the side of OO, how raised in a community gives you really a much more advantage to continue unified and to continue and feel a sense of the community and not feel marginalized from others, because you are basically educated on the same basis. Another point that I wanted to mention here is that, look, what my partner comes, I will just give you like the summary of what my partner tell you. My partner basically tell you that, look, on this debate, why we have this debate on the basis is because the community nowadays in the status quo is suffering from a lot of things. We know that kids suffer from loneliness because parents, and for a fact, they don't have much time to spend with their kids because parents.
You're frozen. I'm going to start a timer, which is. I think we'll wait 2 minutes, and when those 2 minutes are up, if your partner wants to continue the speech where it stopped. Cool. We'll just wait.
Okay.
Hello.
So. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, we can hear you now.
No, I don't know. They're working on the network thing, so it tends to just cut, but it's still working good, right?
Yeah, no bother. You were at 3:35.
35. Okay, cool. Yeah. What was the last thing that I said, if I may ask? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no bother. I think you were just going over the extension and talking about.
So, panel, what I was telling you about our extension is that my partner comes and tell you, look, shit. Partner comes and tells raising the kids on the same basis, when you're raising the kids on the same ideology and on the same educational level, you're not like with basically with their with what you call somewhat I was speaking about the parents when the parents are having a lot of work. Yeah, basically the government tells you that parents will have the right to spend some time with their kids, enough time to create that attachment and to create that bond that they belong to this family and that they don't belong somewhere else and that they're not isolated. But what we tell you is that, look, parents may be loving for their kids, but not all the time they know what is right for their kids, because majority of parents don't have the right education to raise the kids for their developmental benefit. But we tell you that on the other hand, and we are okay. We tell you on the other hand that we, as the government, we are giving you a model where basically people are qualified and get years and years of education and keep the check up with them to see if they are apt to educate our future generation. But before moving to the weighting and the impacts, I will take OO.
Yes. When we explain to you that the community is likely to be around 20 children, but you can't raise too many children together, every case that relies on the community's values or means to be a lot different than the status quo just doesn't stand.
Okay, that stands because of two reasons, actually. One is that even if there are small different societies, but the educational system is still the same. It's still coming from the central government, and the central government still sends people who are educated under the same ideology, under the same syllabus, under the same process of teaching, right? So basically, even if there are differences, there are slight differences that are in the weighting way much more narrow than the differences that exist in your part of the world. What does that mean? Is that the differences in our side of the world allow you to create a more homogeneous society, a less racist society, a society that still gives the right to others, and a more balanced society, right? Because when people have less differences, they tend to polarize together. When in this case, you are giving all the society the same education, somehow the same developmental process, and you are giving them and you are following them into a professional way that then all what's like the this that my partner mentioned, that you are breaking the ideological differences. We never heard of a terrorist race a kibbutz or in like in the place, but like the extremism is created within families, the radicalism is created within families, and also lonely kids that suicide are created within families, right? Because what we say here is that, look, it's risky to keep the kids only with the families because of two things. Because one, they are like the parents are really busy working, and if they have time, we're not sure they are good parents because most parents do not have the education. So for all of these reasons, we are proud to propose.
I think that's